time.
Hey! We're recording.
What?
Yeah. I told you I was going to hit
I
record.
was about to talk about someone, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but just in a way that
Right.
probably I don't want everyone to hear,
Yeah, that's true.
but as a positive thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hey, it's been a while since we've been together, and it's going to take us a minute to recenter.
I'm already there.
Oh, are we?
I'm feeling great.
I mean, I feel great. It's like 60 degrees outside.
It's been so cold in Kansas City, like so bitter cold.
I don't have a hoodie on.
Yeah, now
I
it's
have shorts
beautiful.
on.
You do.
I love how you looked.
You look terrific. Your legs look great. Hey everyone, I hope your legs
also feel great.
Same with your spirits. And so we kind of, I like what we've been doing because we've got this, like, we kind of have two series.
Yeah.
That are separate, but they're like,
moving
hey,
in
what
and
do we
out.
want to do today? Right. So where are we at now, Brian? What are those two series and where are we at?
Or we could start a new one today. We could make it up right now. We're back in our series
I had some thoughts about some new series, so we could do that.
The big shifts. So the 9 paradigm shifts from the KC Missionary Pathway Primer. Like, we're changing the name of it, so there's stuff that's happening.
So our disciple making pathway.
Yeah. There's these 9 paradigm shifts, though, that you got to make when you think of multiplying disciple making movements. Yeah. And when we're thinking about reproducibility, when we're thinking not just like, hey, we'd like to grow some, or this is important to tell others about Jesus, but like really a disciple making movemental mentality. Mm-hmm. So this episode is multiplying disciples in groups, not just one-on-one.
Not just individuals. And you had a great question.
Yep. You may ask it. Yeah. I am curious where this came from. And I don't mean the paradigm shift. I just mean our language of, like, when did we start saying we need to do one-on-one disciple making?
Yeah, like if you're in the church and you hear discipleship.
Yeah.
There is usually a mental picture of Brian and I
sitting in the coffee shop.
There it is. One of us has more information than the other one. We're going to read probably a book or a set thing together, and you are going to probably pour into me knowledge and whatever. I mean, that's fair to say, right? I think that's what
it's actually like fleshing out my question or giving me the answer. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? I bet there was probably a really healthy motive behind this language of one-on-one disciple making, which was, hey, y'all should probably do this and not just rely on Sunday mornings. So somebody was like, hey, we need to do disciple making. Like, let's teach people how to sit with somebody else and read a book together and talk about it.
Yeah.
But it usually ended up empowering an individual as like the expert, and then somebody else is not the expert.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably some biblical basis around that too. I mean, even if you think about 2 Timothy 2, it's like Paul gave it to Timothy.
Yeah.
Usually they stop there.
Yeah.
Like the next phrase is groups.
But
I'm just trying to think through. It's like, I think that we're longing for intimacy. We're longing to be known and to be seen. And so in the church world, it's like that was probably some of what was back there. It's like, well, we want to bring that to people, teach them, and make disciples. And I think the other side of it is what you said, which is also probably a Western hyper-individualism.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be both, right? I mean, I do. Yeah. I think this is different than the idea of mentorship. You know, like there's always going to be mentorship in various ways.
Yeah, which is really important as well.
Yeah. And there's always going to be raising up people. Like, it's not like we don't do one-on-one. In fact, I do a lot of one-on-one movements. I mean, they pour into the few to reach the many a lot. So we're not talking about that's bad to do one-on-one. It's like when we're reaching into lostness, people who don't know Jesus, environments where people are unchurched, or whatever. And it's like we're starting to see disciple making that can kind of reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
That can, for us, we thought emerging into churches, for spiritual families, micro churches. That if you just do one-on-one, you're not going to form spiritual families, and it's not going to multiply. It might linearly, is that a word?
Well done.
Linearly go one to one, which is fine. But like when we're talking about multiplying, we're talking about we want to reach a city, we're talking about new churches emerging out of that, then like you just can't think discipleship can't equal one-on-one. And you can do one-on-one, but just can't equal one-on-one only.
Yeah, so it's really helpful to frame this again in light of we don't mean never do one-on-one conversations. Right. We don't mean one-on-one is bad or wrong. We're saying in light of movement, fill a city with beauty, justice, good news, gospel flourishing among people groups in all sorts of places, we need to make a shift to think, how can we multiply disciples in groups? Yeah. The way Jesus did it, right? So we have like, there's a biblical model for this that we're grounding this in. Jesus had a 3, he had a 12, he had a 72. We've done that episode. You can probably go back and find it somehow. I think the relational circles of Jesus is what we called it.
That show's really good.
Yeah, it probably was. Multiplying. Oh, look, I rarely do that, but I leaned into you that time.
Leaned into my bravado.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, give us a little bit more, Cory, on just like setting this up. Multiplying disciples in groups. Why is it so important? We see it in movements globally.
Yeah, now maybe I was going to do this by asking a question.
Okay. Forcing me to answer it?
No, we ponder this together. I've done this a lot in groups. And if you understand movement dynamics at all, and we look at why have we not seen much of that in a Western context, I like to ask the question, what are the biggest barriers to movement in the West? And so, like, if you're a listener right now, and if you're listening to us, you are a listener, think of what is something very practical in American or just larger Western dynamics that makes it hard to see multiplicative like unleashing disciples who make disciples, churches who make churches. Like, what's something that pops in your head, Brian?
Well, I think I already said one, which is just hyper-individualism. We live in a I can go do what I want to do kind of culture.
Yeah.
I'm alone.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we could name a bunch of others. I mean, sometimes the church structure that we're in, people say that a lot. I think a lot of it just we don't understand desperate prayer, authoritative. We don't understand our role as like priests on mission. We don't understand that. But like as far as just practicality, individualism, or the fact that we are so individualized in the way that we think that we often don't have our own networks of friends and family for the gospel to kind of move like people.
It's not true necessarily of the entire West, but definitely most of the West grows up not in a I don't want to use the word tribal mentality, but like even our family structure is like oftentimes limited to your little nuclear family. Like the extended families, we've lost the day of like I'm not saying across the board, but like you just don't have that connection because we're a highly mobile society too. So it's like we moved across the country, we can move back across the country, and it creates that disconnect that we don't have this like deep interconnected web of relationships.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was hanging out with Maria, one of our For the Nations leaders. Maria's from Germany, right? And she's deep well of wisdom when it comes to movements. But she'll talk about like the difference. Like many Western cultures are individualized. America's hyper individualized. It's who we are and everything.
Yeah.
So this is practical, obviously, in this conversation for a couple of reasons. One is when we think of discipleship, it's going to go into the same bucket as all the other things we think of. Me. It's about me. It's about individual. It's about one person. But if we're thinking about it in terms of a paradigm shift to see movement, like I think of like a maze, right? It's like you're going a maze, like if you're like in a life-size maze, or if you're a mouse and you're in a maze, right? And you're like, the gospel to freely be released. Imagine a maze that has almost no walls to stop it. Right? It's just like you can kind of.
That's not a maze.
Yeah, it's more just roads, just pathways, right? But you can see like there's like you can pass that baton off to that next group of people because there's overlap relationally.
Yeah.
In an American setting or hyper individualized, there's just walls all the time. So you might meet someone who's open to Jesus. but they don't know anyone else. And so it's like, man, we're not getting past one person often. One of the things that we think, when we're in environments that naturally think tribal, communal, group, when we think, okay, let's do groups and not individuals, we can immediately see fruit in a sense of moving into a new network.
Yeah.
For us, I think in America, we have to have a little bit more intentionality of forming groups, being catalysts that glue people together, to be that person. You don't have to be the extrovert that everyone's drawn to, but you just have to be intentional to provide space where people can overlap with one another. You become like connect the dotters. You become catalysts for friendship.
Yeah.
And so I think, we were just talking about a story, I can't tell any details, of a friend of ours, who secondhand, we're actually hearing somebody else describing it to another disciple maker in Underground about this person in their neighborhood. And they met these neighbors, and the whole neighborhood is different. She never knew any neighbors, and now she knows all these people.
Yeah.
And as she's describing it to this disciple maker within Underground, she knows the person.
Yeah.
She knows the person she's talking about, and she asks, "Oh, is it this person? This person?" Yes. We actually get to see, because they purposefully created community.
Yeah, community. Yeah.
So when we plant the gospel in a group of people, we don't think just individual. We're thinking how can we get people together, community of people, to almost create the pond in which to fish in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of analogies. Mazes.
The metaphors are rolling.
Yeah. But all that, I'm just stirring in my brain. It is a key. It's a key idea in any movement, that you're thinking groups, not individuals. And in the West, I think it's even more important. We got to double click on that and be like, how do we even create groups?
Yeah.
Outside the walls of the church, we got to be relational catalytic weirdos to get people together. Whew, sorry.
That was good, man. That was a good roll. One of the things we're going to talk about is why the shift matters. And you're highlighting some of it. Some other pieces that I thought were pretty good. Scalability, because we want to see it move faster. Yeah. Obedience-based learning. When we do it in groups, we get to watch other people be obedient. So there's a lot of encouragement in that. You miss that in one-on-one. A lot of times in a one-on-one relationship, when we start talking about the obedience part, it's like, did you do that thing? And then the other person is like, I didn't do the thing.
Yeah.
And there's a power dynamic that happens there that is, I don't think it's super healthy. It's like I'm not being inspired by watching a larger number of people go hey, we're in this together. Which we are hyper individualized. I would not push back on that at all. But there is something in us that is clearly longing for more.
Totally, yeah.
That's the weird tension.
We see it as a weakness.
Yeah,
right. It's the lens in which we see it, but we also see that it's weak.
But we also look at I just watched Remember the Titans with the kids. Yeah. And we're weeping through this thing and trying, we're hitting pause and helping them understand what's going on. Why are they? Why is this conflict there? How are they resolving it? And you can feel yourself the whole time going yeah, it's got to be this team.
Yeah.
And look what happens when they come together, and this inspiration of being a part of the thing, and this core corporate identity that emerges out of it. And it's always when you have the one or two guys that just want to be the Lone Ranger, is fighting against it. So we're longing for it, and we know we'll be better when we're inspired by the larger movement. Which is kind of playing into the last one we put there, just diverse perspectives. More voices mean more wisdom and accountability. And so we talk about this with Discovery Bible Study, that we miss this in our past when it's an expert teaching us what we should believe, versus the power of the Spirit speaking through all of his creation, going oh, this person highlighted this in the passage, and this person, this part of their story influenced the way they read it. And I'd never heard that before. And that actually resonates with my story. And man, just the power of how Scripture comes alive in us when we hear more of that plurality of voices rather than the singular line by line.
It's so good. I've done this in movement trainings, as a participant, and then I've done it a few times as a trainer, where I'll put up on a slide like one of those, almost like a Where's Waldo type of picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? When there's like 1,000 little
Mm-hmm.
people doing 1,000 little things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they might be playing on the beach over here, and they're playing baseball, and someone's reading, and someone's whatever, right? It's just like everywhere. And so I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to put this up for 15 seconds and get as many observations as you can. You can't write anything down, just as many observations. And we'll put this thing up, and everyone will be like, okay, they're staring, and they're like trying to memorize. And I'll just like, okay, boom, we're done. And then I will call, okay, I'll be like, Brian, what did you see? And you'll start, you know, maybe you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 observations, and we'll really sit. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. What did the rest of us see? And you open it up to this larger crowd of people, and we start spouting everything off, right? You start to see this thing over here, this observation, this nuance of this, and there's like, oh yeah, this was wearing red. No, he wasn't wearing a red hat. He was wearing a blue hat. Oh yeah, it was blue, and he was, you know, and all of a sudden this picture comes to life because everyone's observing it together. And that stood out to me. I haven't done that in a while, and I want to.
I know I haven't.
Feels compelling.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that with you.
Where it's like, yeah, there's something so important about group participation, discovery. And if we're just going to look at it in like a discovery Bible study setting, right? Because that's so much of our how-to disciple making.
Right.
You're just me and Brian sitting at a coffee shop. There's going to be good stuff. It's going to be more than if I'm just reading it by myself. But man, if there's 6 or 7 people in it, and we have different avenues of life, and some of them are like have been following Jesus maybe for a while. Some of them this is brand new. Maybe it's all brand new, but we all have different experiences.
Yeah,
we bring to this. And suddenly, and it is so, I know you've experienced this, I've experienced it countless times. When you're in some kind of discovery Bible study group format and people observe things, it's like, I have been reading this Bible since I was freaking little. I've never thought of that. And that's so cool. And your perspective is so powerful because it's not because it's religious. You know, it's like, it's fresh. I don't know how else to say it. It feels fresh and real. So yeah, just the very dynamics of, so we're talking about both strategy, effectiveness to reach people far from Jesus, how do we actually see movement. We have to think of more than just one-on-one. And then we're thinking of dynamics. Yeah. Like actually in the group itself, there's actually an effectiveness. It's more effective than a one-on-one.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to get to. Well, let me say this one first. Like, the DBS part is really important because that is like our general way of. But just like we talked about in a recent podcast, I can't think of the specifics, but it was like, it's more than like the DBS. I think it was the obedience or something.
Yeah.
Where it was like, it's all of life, you know? Yeah. So like even in this, we're saying disciple making in groups is like, you're sharing life with these people. And so if I only watch one person that's like, hey, let's use a parenting example. Like if we think one-on-one as another metaphor, and like I have the person that I'm learning from that will teach me how to parent. Parent your kid this way. Well, I got 5 of them, and I have to parent all 5 of them very different. And that way didn't work for 4 out of 5 of them. What do I do with the other 4?
So when you have multiple kids, you get humbled by the parenting strategies fast.
But like when you're so like to make all of life spiritual, and they go like when you think about an extended family, and you're discipling each other in your parenting, you're discipling each other in your recreational time. Like let's highlight a specific example of, you seem to spend a lot of time away from your family doing your hobbies, and you're watching these other guys pour into their families, and it's like the modeling that they're doing in their life is calling you back, you know. How do we disciple each other in our generosity? Like we have a more holistic conversation around it, rather than somebody going, make sure you give your 10% and you move on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? It's like there's an all of life.
Totally. I mean, it's kind of like the DBS example where we're looking at the picture and we're all getting it together. It's the same idea, but more holistically. Yeah. You're able to learn from one another, step into things that's not just one person has all the answers or just one-on-one. No doubt. Like I do think I know we got our outline here, but I keep straying from this because I'm.
That's all right, because I'm about to stray from it too.
Okay, good. Because I really am thinking that the conversation here is along those two streams. On one stream, we have got it's 10:02. Jesus,
oh yeah,
pray for more workers. We always pray
more
for more
workers into the harvest.
10:02.
Amen.
We on one stream, we've got the mission strategy stream. If we're looking to reach our cities, we can't just think one-on-one. We're never going to get there, right? We don't have enough. We don't have enough resource. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough. It's like there's not multiplication baked in. It's just one. It's just even if it's replicatable.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of one-on-one discipleship, at least the idea is it's replicatable. Even if you just sit in that, it's just not effective. So some of our conversations are on this stream. Some of our conversations, because we see the insufficiencies, of just hyper individualism, we're actually talking about the communal nature in general of groups, like how much better it is to do this within family.
Yeah.
Even discovery settings, how much better it is to do this around people. Well, the reason why we spend so much time talking about, like, you're passionate about this, and it's so good to hear over and over again. It's like, micro church is not the gathering where we just have a discovery Bible study and do our thing. That is one of rhythms. I don't think I need to tell my friends in Africa that.
Yeah.
Because they just do it naturally. That's just the reality. When we talk about tribal or communal or familial cultures, that's what we're talking about. We don't have to tell them to be intentional about having meals together. That's what they do.
Yeah.
When they have something, they're sharing it with everyone else. That's just how they've grown up. It's everything that says to us we need to have our own space and we need to be able to be an individual by myself. That's so ingrained in us there. We need to share this with others. We experience this with friends and family. You know, it's like it is just night and day.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell them your micro church is not just the meeting.
Yeah.
Like, but we have to look at Westerners and we're programmatic and we're like, the micro church is not just the meeting. It's the family. It's all the stuff that happens between Monday through whatever Friday that you talk about all the time. And it's so important for us to have that click. Oh yeah. Like, it's not just a program. It's a group of us living life together. And like, so we're in some ways we've double clicked on that a little bit more today, more than we have in the past on this topic.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually super helpful. We talk about this all the time with microchurch, spiritual family.
Yeah.
But when we talk about actually disciple making as a paradigm shift, it's also super important.
All right. This is a turn. It's not on the little outline we made.
Take this outline. We're done with you.
Yeah. Well, that's who we are. So I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier. You were talking about, like, we got to be the glue that pulls people together, and we create groups, and like that's, we got to be catalyzers of relationship. I don't know that you said that word, but it sounded awesome.
Catalyst, because I don't know if catalyzer is a word.
Yeah, that's a word.
Catalyzer? No. That's us not knowing how to use the word catalyst, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, I'll Google it. I won't listen to you. I'll Google it.
No, I'm asking you a question. You have to pay attention. Because what about the people that those words scare me, Cory? Like, how many people are you talking about?
Yeah, that's good.
Like, I don't, not that I'm trying to like let anybody off the hook. I'm just trying to say, like, the more introverted among us 100%. That, like, how do we equip all God's people to go, what does it mean for you to disciple people in groups? Is this everyone's mandate? If I'm terrified by what you said, how do I overcome that? Yeah, that's good. I mean, I have an answer. I have thoughts too. I mean, I don't know if you asked 2 or 3 questions there at the end. It's everyone's mandate. I don't know. Everyone's called to make disciples. So we're talking about effective disciple making. In that sense, it's everyone's mandate, but no. I think of it in a more micro-targeted way then. For some of you, it's probably, depending on who you are and your personality, is how you heard the way I asked that question. If you are someone like my wife and I, we cannot help it. We are people that are going to have social gatherings, and we're going to get people together. Yeah. And when one of us has a birthday, we're going to struggle with inviting 3 or 4 people. Now, we can do 3 people, 4 people. Once you get past 5, it's like might as well be at 75, because it's like that. And I'm not joking. My middle son and my youngest daughter are the exact same way. It's like planning a birthday party. I'm like, that's your whole grade.
well, we don't want this person left out. And then eventually Susan and I are dropping way too much money to make sure everyone's fine. So if you're that person and you're thinking, I'm going to be a catalyst or a catalyzer.
It is a word.
It is a word. I had to Google it too. I don't know. I have to still my doubts.
Don't challenge mine.
There's things like missional. Is that a word?
No.
I mean, we made it up, but it's now a word. Is that like catalyzer?
Well, at some point, none of these were actual words, and we decided that they should be. So.
There you go. I don't know if that helps your point or mine. But you might hear that because you're socially extroverted, get people at the same room, and it might be, okay, let's throw parties is language we use a lot in underground. Throw parties, get people in the same room. There are going to be introverts that I would argue might actually do this better if it's a little more targeted. We always say, think sniper, not shotgun. And this is another one of those sniper, not shotguns. When you have someone over for dinner, have a neighbor over for dinner. But then the next time, have that neighbor and the other neighbor, right? And just like maybe a couple people, like instead of just one person, add two. Yeah, and those are actually become safer spaces. And then you can kind of strategic. I would say there's strategy behind that kind of stuff where you're kind of molding people together for safe space. I think anyone can do that.
Yeah.
If you're super extroverted or super introverted, anyone can do that.
Yeah, and I would say don't push this too far at any point. Like, try not to hear what we're saying as black and white, even though we said think this way, don't think that way. Because I would go 75 people. I mean, like, how effective can you be at disciple making that group because it's so high, But I also know the strategy for you guys is like, well, there's a lot of people. This is true for us, so that we can become closer with a few, so that we can be more intentional with even less. And the reverse is true for those that may need more space, more time to build back the other way. The other thing I was going to say is persons of peace. If you are that introverted person, find a teammate that's just way better at it. Again, don't think I'm responsible to disciple people. It's like, no, you can have a teammate that helps become the glue. Pray for that person that will do the gluing work so you can show up and be present with them.
Yeah. This isn't a micro church story, but it happened yesterday in my neighborhood. So I want to share it. So we've got this good friend. She's like the young grandma and on the street, and she's amazing. And everyone loves her and knows her. She puts it upon herself when there's a new neighbor on the street to sit with the new neighbor and just go down and tell every single person's name on the street and tell them all about him. Right. Mm-hmm. So I have a picture. This happened. It was 2 days. It was 2 days ago. We're outside in the front because it's beautiful. And I take a picture of her with our brand new neighbor who lived right next door. And it's her pointing at each house. And I'm just laughing about it because I was going to put it on the Facebook page. And she's like, she might be talking about you. But this idea with this neighbor, for us, she'd have that same role for us. Mm-hmm. It's like she knows everyone. Yeah. Hang out with her. That's great. We've talked about people like this before. It's like, find that person, hang out with them, lean on the relational influence they have. We did and this is again just our neighborhood. This is how Susan and I roll. But alongside that person I'm talking about, we did a progressive dinner at Christmas time. Right?
We did that one
each
year.
House,
yeah, I love it. Yeah,
appetizer, main dish, dessert, and we went alongside her because we both knew her. Now we've become that group in our neighborhood too because of all the intentionality of living like missionaries in our street. And the big thing is we're going to just create opportunities to know each other. So she actually was going around in the circle and she goes, and here's the Osmonds. They're the what she did. Oh man, like the cornerstone of this or something like that.
That's awesome, man.
But I will say this new neighbor, and someday if she's listening to this, she said, guys, we feel so blessed to be here. My husband and I, they're young, they're in their 20s. It's like there's an aura here. She starts to say, there's something different. There's an aura in this street. And I'm like, yeah, we've been praying for that. That aura is called the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's like that. Just strategically, what we're talking about is a great plan. Find that person who knows the names of everyone.
Yep. All right. So as we wrap it up again, just don't overcomplicate this. Start small. Nobody's asking you to change your whole world today, but the encouragement would be also. Well, let me say one more thing. Actually, we talk a lot about our context again. They're networks of relationships that sound more embedded into neighborhoods. That's not true across the network. We could share story after story of houseless people, incarcerated people. I mean, we just keep going. The young adults, 20-somethings, high school students, like we can keep going. A lot of the microchurches in the network are network based. They're groups of people that somebody said, oh, this is a group of people that I have relational capital with, and I'm going to engage that group. So there's a ton of examples. And the encouragement is to think that way, like, to whom have you been sent? And to think the bigger network of those people, not just one or two. Yeah, I don't know how to wrap that up any more than just to say, if we're going to think movement and fill this city, we have to think disciple groups of people, not just one-on-one.
Yeah, yeah. They overlap with so many of the other things that we talk about, and it's sometimes hard to talk about new things when you've talked about this topic 1,000 times. So maybe that's where I'm at a little bit now with that. But I'm just more and more convinced that we need to be people who get people together.
Yeah,
and we need to be. It's okay to do one-on-one, but we need to move past it.
Yeah,
we need to move beyond it as well. There are countless Discovery Bible study environments in our city right now that are one-on-one at a coffee shop doing a Discovery Bible study. And that is beautiful. And that should be part of the ecosystem. But to start thinking about, replication, new groups, bigger than that, we just have to move on. We have to get past it in some capacity. And each network might be a little different.
Yeah.
High school is going to be a little different, right? They do a lot of one-on-one Discovery Bible studies and 0 Hour, and there's beautiful stuff, but also thinking, how can we include more people who don't know Jesus? How can this get more momentum? So I think that's the fun work of contextualizing, that stuff in your cities. But if we're going to see movement, that's is key.
Yep.
It's not just be one-on-one. That'll be groups.
Cool. Join us next week. We'll be talking about disciple to and through conversion.
Unless we jump in that other topic.
Oh.